Hey guys, this is Jeff Stanek here with Figured Out Baseball. We've got another Figured Out Baseball podcast today for you, and we're really lucky to be joined by Rob Fournier, who is the head baseball coach at Wabash Valley Community College. It's a junior college in Mount Carmel, Illinois, and he's one of the most successful junior college coaches in the country. So we're very, very lucky to be joined by him today. And before we get into questions with Coach Fournier, I'll kind of give you a background on him and let you know a little bit more about him before we get into things. He's actually, despite the fact that he's coaching in Illinois, he's actually a native of Ojai, California. Hope I pronounced that right. I had to ask him a few minutes ago. In 1991, 1992, he was a shortstop for Ventura Community College, a junior college in California. Then in 1993, 1994, he became an all-conference center fielder for MacMurray College, which is a Division III school in Jacksonville, Illinois. He graduated from MacMurray in 1994, and that's where he started his coaching career as well. In 1995 and 1996, he was the hitting coach and recruiting coordinator for MacMurray College. In those 2 years as a coach, the team compiled a 62-22 record. The very next year, 1997, he became the head coach at Wabash Valley, and he has been there since. So he has completed 22 seasons. He is just about to start his 23rd year, and I'll give you some kind of highlights there. In the meantime, in 1997, which is his first season being the head coach, the team went 37-16 after going 12-34 the previous year. In 2017, the team went to the Junior College World Series, finished third place overall in the country for Division I junior college teams. In his coaching career and with the players that he has had players move on to play in the SEC, the Big 12, the Missouri Valley, Conference USA, Sun Belt, Big 10, Atlantic Sun, Ohio Valley, and many other conferences. And obviously to have that many guys move on to those Division I schools, his players have got to be good academically, which is an important thing for junior college and something that we'll talk about. He's had 68 players who have signed pro contracts. 4 alumni who played at Wabash Valley made it to the major leagues. He's had more than 150 players sign Division I baseball. He's had 22 straight winning seasons. His teams, which is every season, in case you're counting, that's every year that he's been at Wabash, they've had a winning record. They've also won 30-plus games every year that he's been there. They've won 40 or more games 15 times in his 22 seasons, which is unbelievable. The team has won 12 conference championships in his 22 seasons. He's also been nominated the Coach of the Year 12 times. He has 18 straight years ranked in the NJCAA Top 25. He is also he's been an associate scout with the Cleveland Indians. He's currently an associate scout for the Philadelphia Phillies. And Coach Fournier has done all this while only being 47 years old. It's an unbelievable resume. And Coach, we're just really, really glad to have you here today on the podcast with us.
Yeah, this is a treat. Being able to speak with an old friend about baseball is very fortunate. So thank you very much for having me.
Yeah, it's been a while since you and I have talked. I used to go and recruit Coach Fournier's guys at Wabash, and he always had a lot of guys who were too good to come wherever I was coaching, and luckily we got a couple along the way, and still keep in touch with some of those guys, actually, believe it or not. But just kind of want to start out, my first question, I just kind of like to touch on some things in your bio that are interesting first. And the first one is, being a California native and playing junior college baseball in California. How did you end up in Illinois playing your 4-year? After you left junior college, how did you end up in Illinois playing?
Well, it's an interesting question. For me, I transitioned from being an infielder to an outfielder, so I wasn't heavily recruited. But I was a young man that kind of wanted to venture out and get out of California just to kind of see the world. And we had, at the time, 3 other players, a real close friend of mine, decided to go to MacMurray College. But right when it became time to actually go out there, those other individuals decided to, I'm not going to say chicken out, but got cold feet. And I just decided, hey, I'm gonna go for this. And so I decided to drive out in my little Mitsubishi truck and go to MacMurray College, and had some wonderful times there, and the rest was kind of history. So I loved being out there. It was awesome playing Division III baseball at the time, and taught me so many lessons, and it was really cool.
Very cool. And obviously you've been here since. Now your wife's from Indiana, so I assume that kind of makes you pretty indispensable right there, right?
Yeah, she's a Southern Indiana young lady, so that's kind of how that went. But it was kind of neat how she taught me the Midwest way and everything else.
It's funny that a lot of times I know a bunch of guys actually who their coaching jobs have one way or another brought them to meet their wife. Actually, when I was coaching at Southeastern Community College in Illinois, I met my wife when I was out there. So my wife is a Clinton, Iowa native. And so that's kind of a cool thing. At the time, I didn't know what the heck I was doing going out to Iowa to coach, being from Pennsylvania, and I was coaching at a school in Pittsburgh at the time, and I guess that's why. So funny how that stuff works out.
It is.
I guess I want to ask you next just about your first season. So the year before your first year being head coach, the team only won 12 games. Your first year, you won 37. How did you end up getting the head job there? You spent 2 seasons as an assistant coach at MacMurray, and then got the head coaching job at Wabash Valley. As such a young guy, how did you go about getting a head coaching job? How did that work out?
Well, number one, I was just lucky and fortunate that I made the decision to take the assistant job there to begin with. And because I was actually heading back to Ventura College to take a volunteer job there. But my head coach at MacMurray College at the time decided, say, hey, there's an opportunity here. It's a lot more money than what you're making at MacMurray, which was basically nothing. And so when I was at Wabash Valley, I decided to take that job. In the meantime, I was there for, probably going on 2 months, and the head coach at Wabash Valley at the time decided that he was going to take another job. So honestly, I just got lucky in that, hey, they decided it's too late to hire another coach. We're going to give this young man a shot out and see how he does. And luckily, our kids worked really hard, and we decided, hey, we're going to probably do something a little bit different this year and get better. And at the end of the year, they decided to keep me on, and basically the rest is history. But I was very fortunate, just very lucky to get that opportunity and run with it.
So how did you do it that first year, winning 37 games? For those who aren't really familiar with college baseball, in junior college as well as Division I, you're allowed to play 56 games. So to win 37, I mean that's a really good year. Once you get to the upper 30s, that's a pretty successful season. How did you go about doing that? Was it the same players who just got better? Did you get some transfers to come in there, which is something that's kind of unique with junior college? Junior college teams, again, people that aren't familiar, a junior college team can bring a player in between the fall and spring semesters, and they'll be eligible to play, which can't happen at 4-year schools, but at junior college you can. How did you do it that first year?
I really don't know.
Smoke and mirrors, huh?
That is part of it. Is that sometimes when you get a new coach, things can go really good or really bad. And I think the kids kind of rallied behind what we were trying to do at the time. We did get a couple transfers at the break that we worked really hard at from 4-year schools that helped out. And I think that the guys just, bought in and were committed to something we were trying to do. And we had enough talent that year. I think the head coach previous to us, Dan Madrill, had started to get the ship going the right direction. But the kids were just bought into what we were trying to do, and it just kind of snowballed, and we started to sneak up on some people, and our team just got better and better and better. I was very fortunate from the program I came before that I learned some things, and I give the tribute to the kids, and so we were fortunate.
And since then, you obviously haven't looked back. You've won 30-plus games every year, 40 wins in 15 of your 22 seasons. You guys are consistently ranked in the top 25 of junior college baseball. One of the challenging things about coaching in junior college is the turnover that you have in your coaching staff because, and I don't know exactly what your situation is, but I know that, pretty much outside of Division I baseball, there aren't many schools out there, Division II, Division III, NAIA, and junior college. The majority of schools don't pay their assistants well enough to hold their assistants for very long. I know you've got a really great coaching tree underneath you, which I'd like to talk about a little bit as well, but what have you done? What do you think are some of the staples at Wabash Valley that make you guys a consistent winner, despite the fact that there is a lot of turnover on your coaching staff? So obviously you've got to have some things in place with kind of no matter who's there, this is the way that Wabash does it. This is what makes us winners. Would you mind just kind of sharing a little bit of that and what you think makes the team successful year in and year out?
Well, sure, absolutely. And it's, I'm sure it's similar to a lot of other programs and that they have their staples and their core values. But I think it's really important that you coach your coaches and as well as coaching your players. And so, when we do have that turnover, we're not fortunate. Like some programs, they may have full-time assistants, but we're really blessed that we have 2 positions for our guys and that it gives them enough to be able to stay here for a little bit. But their motivation as well is to get our program better than when they came here and hopefully get themselves a more financially stable job moving, down the road. So I think they compete as well, to do their best to help our program out and just learn and move on in that standpoint. So I think that's a big thing in our development is coaching our coaches as well. They're hungry. They want to learn. They want to recruit. They want to go out and network and to become a better coach. And so that's a huge deal when our guys come in here is they really know that, hey, they come to Wabash Valley and they can really recruit and get to know everybody and just, hopefully learn from a system that, in a program that's been in place for a while. So that's been really good, over the years is our coaches just helping our program get better and helping me get better as well. So from that aspect.
So if there's a young coach listening to this, maybe it's even a college player or a guy that's coaching in high school or someone who's just starting their college coaching career who's interested just to know how to move up in the coaching world. What kind of questions do you ask? Like when you're interviewing guys, you have coaching positions come open. Obviously, to maintain this level of success, you've also got to be pretty good at hiring the right guys and getting the guys that come in to buy in. So what kind of questions are you asking for? Are you asking when you're interviewing coaches, when you have an opening, and what are maybe some things on the resume that you're looking for guys that let you know that this guy's going to be a good fit?
Well, one of the things that I do is talk, obviously, the people that, that helped them and kind of promoted them to hopefully get a job here and their references, that kind of thing. But honestly, it's about how I figure out how important it is to them, how hungry they are to be a coach, what things have they been through as a coach, have they had failure, have they had success, I want all that. But most importantly, it's not about, that he's been maybe at the elite programs. It's about how bad this kid wants to coach or this young man. So when we interview, we really grill those guys on how important this is going to be to you. Where do you want to go? And is there any obstacles that's going to stop you from being the best recruiter and how much you want to learn? Because to me, that's when I grew, is when I figured out it's not about me, it's about how much I want to learn as a coach, because that's the ultimate thing. And I'm continually battling right now to just learn as a head coach. So I want to know, if these young men just want to learn and recruit and get to know people and that kind of thing. So those are things that I really grind on. Yeah, it's nice to get, guys from good programs, but if he's not in it for the right reasons. So the interviews are very extensive, about things. So hopefully that answers somewhat of your question.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, so you're a guy that likes to learn. Learning as a head coach to you is important, and you want to get assistant coaches in there that can learn. I'm just curious, what are some good resources that you use, again, for young coaches out there, even like a high school coach that's out there? Are there anything in particular that you kind of look to, whether it's books or podcasts or social media or coaches conventions, or what are some of your best tools to continue to learn and grow as a head coach?
So some of the things, and I want all that, just like you mentioned, I want our guys to network as much as possible. I want them to go to the conventions. I want to go to as many clinics as possible. I want at our camps that we have, I want them to be able to run it and speak and organize things. But some of the things that I really want our guys to do is learn from some programs that they've been around, go to their practice and ask questions. Don't be afraid to go to a head coach. I don't care if it's South Carolina or UCLA, or if you have an opportunity to go talk to that head coach, I don't care if it's the best Division III, best high school program, anybody that's had some experience, I want the young coaches to talk to them, interview them, ask them what works, what doesn't work. And most important, I just want our coaches, our assistants, to be personable, be outgoing, be really aggressive, and be humble. But, the biggest thing is just learning. And so I want our guys the biggest thing that I've learned over the years is our assistants can go to actual practices during the season is a big deal of our guys to learn.
And what about for you personally? What are some of the resources that you like the most for yourself to continue to learn and grow? Is there anything in particular that you might recommend, again, whether it's a book or a podcast or, I don't know, anything, magazines that you read, websites you like to visit where you feel like you're getting good information and you're able to learn as a head coach with the experience that you've got?
It's a good question because some of the things that I learned through, and it just doesn't have to be baseball. The mental game is becoming so more prevalent these days, and so, moving forward with our program, I feel like our program's taken the next level just because we've really bought into what works for us. And there's so many great information out there, but the mental game we try to take from a little bit from whoever, whether it's, Brian Kane or anybody possible that has good information. We are going to absolutely dominate and try to learn from the mental part, what works for us. But I think, I learn from football coaches a lot of times. I learn from, it doesn't matter if it's soccer coaches. I love listening to, coaches in different sports, how it works. And to me, it's about being open-minded and ultimately figuring out what works for me and how our personality as coaches and my personality can take away from other coaches and fit into what we're trying to do. I think that's really important. I love, coaches that when I grew up, I'm a huge USC fan, so I grew up following Pete Carroll and what he tries to do, and I also try to learn from the best coaches in America, from Augie, Garrido to everybody. And I love looking on different podcasts that I listen to on the ABCA to whether it's anybody, but it's a constant battle of trying to find time to learn and listen and what kind of information is going to help best for our program.
I think that's great. And for me, I used to like being able to sit in basketball gyms and listen to basketball coaches. Sometimes on the football field, there's so much going on. I know that there are a lot of really good things on YouTube from football coaches. And, personally, I like anytime I can find a little clip from Nick Saban or Dabo Sweeney. Like, I love listening to those guys talk. But I used to like, as a college coach, like sitting in the basketball gym and just kind of listening to how they taught, because sometimes they just teach things a little differently than you do, and it doesn't matter. It almost doesn't matter what sport, like you said. It's just listening to how coaches communicate with their players, and just sort of the motivation they're using and things like that. I always found really interesting. So the mental game is something that I'm really interested in, and on Figure It Out, we have a sports psychologist who works with us who. She's got a doctorate. She was with the Pittsburgh Pirates last year. She's currently in the middle of publishing a book, and I think that she's going to get back on college campus. I think she likes the college atmosphere a little better than the pro atmosphere. But that's an area that I really have read a lot about, and I really just enjoy studying. The challenge is, how do you then coach what you learn with the mental game into your players? Are there some things that you are able to do with your players through practice or through meetings with the team where you, I guess you teach them the mental game, or whether it's advertent or not? How do you incorporate that into your practices with your team?
So, and it's a great question. I really feel like it's absolutely crucial to what you're trying to do in baseball and in any sport. It doesn't matter, but I think you need to have a routine and a plan, and that's the biggest thing, is try to teach these guys a routine. So what we've been doing the last several years, it's probably been about 7 or 8 years, we've been trying to follow this routine. But every Friday we will meet, and we call it the life skills game is what we do, because it's more than just about baseball. It's about everything. So when we go through every week, we do, which I'm sure you're familiar with, a grid, with our players. Brian Kane was famous for this, I'm sure, which, a lot of people have done, probably even previous, to him. But for whatever reason, that stuck with us. And we do a grid on a weekly basis, and then we incorporate that also sometimes into our hitting groups. We're obviously slowing it down is a big thing, but I just think it's a huge deal doing a grid to be able to just concentrate on one thing at a time, and trying to understand how do you get centered up and how important it is to breathe. And to me, the only thing that I talk about with our guys is the only way possible and the best way possible to get centered up is to breathe and being able to control your nerves, and that's the only way that I know. And so we teach the breathing aspect over and over. We go over the routine stuff over and over every Friday that we meet as a team.
Now, what kind of routines do you go through with your players? Like, what are some things that you've ingrained in them that they'll take with them when they leave your program?
So we have, a situation that we talk about all the time. It's a little program. It's kind of a 5-step program for the mental game, and it's, being able to control your breath, visualize, being able to be in a moment where you feel really, we call it the happy moment, where we tell each one of our players to, slow it down and think back, and it's kind of like a moment in time where everything was slow, whether it's in Little League hitting a home run or the World Series, just whenever you felt good, being able to go back to that moment. And then fourthly, we talk about an ESPN highlight reel for our guys where you see it over and over and over, things that you did really good. And so we have them write it down, and the fifth thing is just being able to breathe again and then start it all over again. So it's like a 5-step process that we go over. And they have that mentally ingrained in their head. And so, we have our guys basically do it before every practice, before every game, and when we need it, when we really need it. And, we have them write it out, we laminate it, they have it to when, they can go back to it and study it. So that's one way that we do the mental game as far as that pertains to baseball, but we also talk about, just routines, your hitting routine. Was something we learned. And I go over and over this from Mr. Ravizza that, of course, you probably went through that as well, but just a mental routine of, when they step up to the plate, things that they do and that kind of stuff. So we have them write it out, and then we talk about it, and they have it laminated, and they go back to that every day. So those are two things, the 5-step the process, and then just a hitting routine that they go over every single day in batting practice in a game. So,
and for people who aren't familiar with who Coach is bringing up, it's the late Ken Ravizza and Brian Kane are two guys that are pretty easy to find on either YouTube, social media. But those are two of the real pioneers in baseball, the mental game of baseball, and some really good books, as well as the videos they've got. So the routines that you guys go through and the cards that they're laminating, are your kids, do you encourage them to even reference those like in a game if they've had a couple tough at-bats or a tough inning on the mound, but they've got to go back out there? Do you encourage them to even do that in the, during the game?
Yeah, so like we have, our routine is our 4 hitters that, our guy that's obviously hitting live, the guy's on deck who's he's getting the timing down. The guy in the hole is getting the release point. And then our 4th guy is basically 4 guys, trying to work together. That 4th guy is visualizing, through, his imagery stuff. So those 4 guys work together, and, they work together as timing. That the guy on deck, he's not running up to the, obviously to the plate ready to hit. The next guy behind him is getting the bat for him. So everything's slow, and then we go through that. Those 4 guys work together.
I think that's terrific. And those little things, breathing and establishing a routine, they almost seem like too easy. But when you start doing it as a player, and for me, I wish I had a better routine, a better mental game as a player, but as a coach, it's meant so much to so many players, and I've seen so many players have success with it. And when you were talking about the highlight reel that you have your guys sort of write out, it made me think back to so right now I live in Altoona, Pennsylvania, and there's a AA team here in town. And I've had quite a few former players that have come through and played AA in Altoona. So usually, if they're visiting, I try to take them out for breakfast and kind of talk with them. And there's one pitcher who's in the Rockies organization, and he's still pitching, and hopefully he gets a chance to be in the big leagues at some point. But he and I were sitting and talking, and he's pretty in tune with the mental game. And we were talking about some things one day at breakfast, and he's been in town a couple times, and he started talking about one of his teammates, and they played together the year before, and the guy was an all-star. He was an unbelievable player. Played together the following year. Now they both made it to AA, and all of a sudden it was a hitter that started to experience some difficult times, And the guy that I met with actually put together like a video highlight for him. And it was from the year before, and he found enough video from him, and he basically showed him and said, look, man, this is who you are. You're not the guy who's hitting 210 right now. This is not you. You're the guy that hit 335 last year with all these extra base hits. Like, this is you. And he basically showed him a video and like reminded him who he was. And this former player of mine told me that once that happened, the guy went on a tear for a month and hit like 400 the next month. And it was just unbelievable how much that helps to just remind yourself who you are.
Yeah, absolutely.
I think that's a really great thing you do with your guys, and obviously a big part of the reason that you guys are successful and have a lot of successful individuals, which, you know, accounts for the good teams. So I just want to talk a little bit more. Obviously you can tell that I like to talk about winning. I like to talk about success. And I think those are, you know, something that people want to really learn. With the junior college program, you've got a lot of things you're trying to accomplish. You know, you're trying to win games. You're trying to get kids to graduate with their associate's degree so they're ready to go on to four-year schools. You're trying to prepare them just to be, you know, good people as well, which I know that you do. How do you define success in a junior college program? You know, for you to have success, I'm sure it's more than just wins. It's more than just wins. How do you define success within your program, Coach?
It's a great question, but you know, the old cliche, being the best you can be, is just so important when you really get to the end of the day of it. And so success to us is, you know, each year, and it's hard, you know, because you put so many, everybody wants to get into all the goals and everything else, and those are awesome. But, you know, making a long story short here, we want our guys to graduate. Number one, we always got to, you know, talk about this, is the academics is so important, okay, because we feel like we get really good players that, you know, all these guys are capable of going, whether it's professionally or Division I or Division II or it doesn't matter. Our biggest thing is moving kids on. And so you can't do that unless you don't have a plan for the academics. So that has to go hand in hand. And a lot of times in junior college, you really get, you know, the fallacy of, hey, you know, maybe these kids are here for a reason. Well, yeah, a lot of them are maybe because they're not good students in high school, but we don't even look at what they've done in the past. We have a plan for them when they get here, and we have our expectations. So the academics and baseball have to go hand in hand. So that's one of the biggest things for success, is graduating our guys so they have the opportunity to go to the school where they want to. Because to me, you know, everybody wants to, you know, talk about how many Division I players or pros, scouts, and all that kind of stuff that are moving on. And that's great, and we've had some success with that. But, hey, there's great Division II schools. There's great NAIA programs. There's great Division III schools. That's where I'm from. So we want our guys just to have a chance, you know, to graduate with their associate's degree and be able to move on to whatever school that they seem fit. So at the end of the day, it's being the best we can be, graduate our players, you know, hopefully win as many games as we can, win a conference championship, have an opportunity to, you know, go to the World Series every year, and just moving our players on, you know. But at the end of the day, we talk about the player development. And that's so important, because if you love to coach, you're going to want to enjoy watching kids get better on a daily basis. And it ain't easy, but the player development is a very, very crucial part of what we're trying to do at Wabash Valley. It's getting kids better, and because it's the ultimate when you see a kid after 2 years develop and being able to be the best he can be. So there's just so many things that go into that, but we're trying to kind of break it down and simplify it, not just to wins and losses, although that's awesome. But at the end of the day, we just want to get our kids better.
And most of the time, I think when you have that attitude and you recruit the right players and you're trying to do things the right way, the wins come. And
they do.
You know, however much you're focused on them, they're going to be there. And there's a couple different ways that I'd like to go off of that answer. And just things you just talked about. I guess the first one I'd like to ask is just about, you know, if there's a high school athlete or the parent of a high school athlete or even a high school coach listening to this, what would be your advice when they are looking into different levels? Because you touched on some things, you know, a lot of guys just have a mindset of, you know, Division I or bust. But there's a lot of other really good levels out there. You had a successful Division III career. You send your players on all the time to good Division IIs, as well as the Division Is. And being in a junior college program, I think sometimes that level is overlooked by some kids, especially in different parts of the country where junior college baseball is not very prevalent. Like in Pennsylvania, there aren't a lot of good division junior college programs in the state or even around the state. There are a couple here and there, but not a lot of them. So I don't know a lot of kids come out of high school and really look at junior college as a viable option. So if you were giving advice to like your neighbor or your nephew or someone like that who's looking at the college process, what are some things that you think are the most important elements to deciding, to kind of narrowing it down and deciding what level or what school is right for you?
Well, we always talk about this in our recruiting process, and it is about the right fit. But that right fit has so many things involved in that. We talk about, with your parents, financially, does it fit? Does it fit academically? Does it fit as a place that you can, have a chance to play right away? Because if you're a guy that, thinks that, I'm going to go to this program, so I'm going to, step right in and play, well, sometimes that's not the right program for you, because to me, I don't care where you go, you need to compete. And so there's so many things that goes into that, but I think ultimately parents need to understand that, it's got to be good for them on all areas of finances. It's got to be good academically, where my son can actually grow as a person and get better academically, become a better baseball player. We can develop, whether that be Division I or Division III or what have you. I think it's about getting better. And I think that ultimately that parents need to understand that these things there's great programs at every level, and that it's about getting your kid to the program that's going to help him, achieve whatever he wants to do. But at the same time, you don't have to, go in debt $40,000 a year just to go to a place when you're going to end back up at a junior college. And so you see so many different scenarios in that. And I think that be patient along the process, go visit all the schools and write down what's the really important factors, involved in this, because, man, it can be really, really difficult to answer that question, but ultimately it's the right fit.
Yeah, it's a loaded question because each situation is a little bit different, but it's just fun to hear. I like asking coaches that just to kind of hear, hear their perspective on things. So you kind of brought up about kids that go to a four-year school, a really expensive four-year school, and then end up transferring to junior colleges. And this might be sort of an extension of the last question.
Yeah.
What would you say are the top couple reasons that kids transfer from four-year schools back to you guys? What are some of the biggest reasons that you've seen that over the years?
Well, I think that, number one, academics. I mean, there is a lot of students out there that will step into a four-year school, and they're really good students in high school, and they get to a four-year atmosphere. For whatever reason, they're not mature enough, and their priorities are not. They're not mature enough to handle those priorities, and the academics slip first. And it's a different ball game when you're at some universities that have, huge classroom sizes, or there's just so much going on that are distracting. And so I think the academics will slip first, and that's why we get some kickbacks. The other reason is maybe it's financial reasons. They can't afford it. And I think most importantly, it's because of what I call, how America works right now, is the kids want to play right now. And so if they're competing for a position, it's hard to play at any good program. But if you're at a Division I program, there's not too many freshmen that are just, walking right into programs and starting and being impactful. And so sometimes they get humbled. And it's good. It's good for kids to get humbled and fail. And so that's why we get a lot of bounce backs. And
that's a tough conversation to have with kids, because at the same time, like you want to tell a young kid, like, hey, don't be afraid to compete. Don't be afraid to go to that school and compete. But then you want them to be optimistic, but it just doesn't always work that way. And I guess a good way to figure that out would be to see, who's playing ahead of you at those schools. At junior college, you don't have that as much because you only have freshmen and sophomores.
Right.
But,
That's right.
For example, if you want to play third base and the school where you want to go to, they had a sophomore play every day at third base last year, like, yeah, you might be able to beat that kid out, but
right.
It might not be the easiest route to go.
That's right.
I want to talk a little more about junior college. I love the junior college route myself. I wish that I had gone to junior college, and now that I've coached at that level, it's to me, it's the right fit for nearly everybody. I mean, there aren't many people unless you're talking about the guy who's got a chance to be a freshman All-American or something like that, junior college seems like the best route for most people to me, but I don't know that enough people out there are familiar with a lot of the nuances of junior college. So I just want to spend a little bit of time on that.
Sure.
Academically at a junior college, this is probably one of the stigmas is that, the questions about the academics, but you've obviously had kids move on to some of the best, not only athletic, but some of the best academic schools in the country, not just the Division I schools, but, a lot of Division IIs and Division IIIs have excellent academics as well. Can you just talk a little bit about how the academics work there with the 2-year associate's degree, how that transfers into 4-year schools? Do most of their credits transfer when they're looking to go to a 4-year school? Can you mind talking about that process a little bit?
Yeah, absolutely. And it's something that we always, talk about the first 10 or 15 minutes when a recruit comes in. I always have them set up with an academic advisor, and they go through the whole gauntlet of kind of how and what it takes to graduate from here, because that's the bottom line is we want our kids to graduate, and they have to have that expectation to do it. But going into that, our curriculum here is based on the University of Illinois' curriculum. So to get an associate's degree, it's normally about 60 to 64 hours that he's going to have to pass with an associate. That will help with an associate's degree. And involved in that is all your general education requirements. So your first 2 years, you generally take your general ed requirements which is your math, your sciences, and all of the good stuff that you would take even if you're at Morehead State the first 2 years. And then you declare a major. So our goal is to make sure that, we take care of those classes the first 2 years, and that every one of our, baseball players, our student athletes, they're taking anywhere from 15 to 18 hours a semester, okay? Now, to be a full-time student, it's 12 hours, but we want our guys to take 15 to 18, so we're well above, the 64 hours when it's time to go, in case that you're struggling in class and you have to maybe drop it and take something else. We want that, system in place, so we want our guys to compete. And normally in the fall, there's going to be a bigger load than in the spring. So that's kind of the skinny of that. But, it's so important that along those lines of graduating, you have a system in place, that whether it's study hall, whether it's some sort of a system in place that you're monitoring your players. And that's something that we take a lot of pride in here.
So if a kid comes in there and he takes, legitimate classes for 2 years, and he's got a full workload, 15 to 18 hours a semester for 2 years. And again, this is just to inform people that are listening in this.
Sure.
Kids are basically able to transfer to any school that they want academically. Maybe not. I don't know if Ivy League schools will take junior college transfers out. I haven't really got into that, but for the most part, you're 95% of 4-year schools out there will accept that associate's degree with likely every class, maybe except one on occasion, but pretty much every class is going to transfer, right? So you really don't miss a beat academically if you do what you're supposed to do at your junior college.
And that's the beautiful thing about it. A lot of people don't understand that. But, yeah, we have binding agreements with, a prestigious school like Illinois, and we've sent kids to several of the Big Ten schools. And so, yeah, aside from you hit it right on the head, was the Ivy League. We've sent players to tons of prestigious schools. So, yeah, as long as they're taking, those classes, and there's some kids that have to struggle a little bit and have to take remedial and test out of remedial to get to regular classes. But, honestly, we don't use any excuses for a kid not to graduate, whether it's learning disabilities, whether it's, hey, he's already a good student. There's no excuse for him after 2 years not to graduate. And, our goals every year, this past semester, we had a really amazing GPA. It was 3.4 team GPA. So our expectations are 3.0 or higher, at least at Wabash Valley. And most junior colleges do that as well. So as long as after 2 years, you have a 2.5 with the new regulation for 4-year schools, or higher GPA, you're going to be in good shape.
What about financially? This is another area that's probably overlooked by a lot of people, but typically, in general, junior colleges tend to be cheaper than 4-year schools. Is that the case with Wabash as opposed to like a lot of the 4-year schools your kids go to, or even the 4-year schools that are in the region of Illinois, Indiana, around you guys?
Sure, and it's probably some percent of all junior colleges are going to be cheaper. There is private junior college as well that are, that's different, but all junior colleges are going to be, cheaper than a four-year school. So we're fortunate that obviously we offer scholarships, but even if you didn't receive a scholarship, it's incredibly cheap to go to school here. And it's just awesome that we can, offer, our education services at that kind of rate, and we're blessed for that. So.
Scholarships.
Yep.
You guys are a Division I junior college, and there is Division I, Division II, and III junior college programs across the country. I don't know about the California junior college system if it's different than the NJCAA, but can we speak about the NJCAA, and would you just mind giving people an idea of what kind of scholarships are possible for Division I and Division II junior college programs?
Yeah, so it's similar to a four-year school, and four-year colleges in that Division I can offer scholarships. They're able to offer the maximum, and all schools at Division I junior college vary. Some get the maximum, and the maximum is 24 tuition waivers, books, housing, and food. Some can do that, some can't. At the Division II junior college level, they can offer full tuition and books, and they're able to offer 24 tuition waivers as well. And then Division III junior college are not able to offer scholarships. So it's real similar in the NCAA in that regard. So, and it just varies from, school to school like the four years do.
And obviously it depends what the budget is, but just to reiterate that's Division I junior colleges have an opportunity to offer 24 full scholarships.
Yep. Absolutely.
Covering everything if the school is financially able to do so.
Exactly. So, that's a wonderful thing.
So not only are junior college in general is usually cheaper than a four-year school, and in addition to that, a Division I, an NCAA Division I team is only allowed to offer, they have 11.7 total scholarships, whereas a Division I junior college could have as many as 24 full scholarships. So I guess just more reason why it's usually a financially better decision to go to junior college. I don't mean to just make this a total pitch for JUCO, but I really, Coach Fournier, I believe in the level so much that I think it's important that we spend time just talking about this and letting people to know about it. And at least with Wabash and a lot of other junior colleges, a lot of times the schools are going to be a little bit smaller, and not all the time, but a lot of times the junior colleges are maybe some smaller towns. And I guess the reason I even bring that up is because going to a four-year school at a college that has 20, 30, 40,000 people at it can sometimes be daunting, and you can get a little bit lost, and also I think you can kind of get caught up in the atmosphere of being in a place like that and kind of lose track of why you were there in the first place. Is that something that you've seen as well as just like the kind of the small town setting that you guys have? Do you think that helps guys to kind of stay on track with what they came there to accomplish?
I really do. Obviously you've been through it, and you really know exactly how it works, and you're right on track with what, basically I talk about, with all of our players, current and incoming, freshman recruits, is, hey, for us at Wabash Valley College, we get the right fit. We want kids that are not worried about all the social distractions. You're coming here because you want to dominate the classroom. You want to dominate getting better in baseball. And we're not going to tell you that we got 8,000 people in the city of Mount Carmel. We're not going to talk and sell about all the things that are around it. It's not about that. And so for us, we keep our kids so busy that we eliminate distractions. Our kids are going to find ways to, make poor decisions. It doesn't matter where you're at in the country, they'll do that. But for us, there's less time to do that, and there's less distractions. And we want the right fit that are just worried about baseball in school. And those things are so crucial for the kids that we get. And we believe that's one of the reasons why we've been successful.
You're talking about recruits and the kids you're getting on campus, kids you end up signing. What are some of the things that you look for in players that you're recruiting? What are some of the most important attributes a player needs to have to be recruited by Wabash Valley?
So it's a great question. And through my course of coaching, you're constantly competing to find, what I say the right fit. And I always circle back to, for us at Wabash Valley, it's always value over need. We're never going to pass up on a player that brings something special. Everybody talks about, these are our needs. For us, if we get 5 great shortstops, and they're athletic and we can move them around, we're going to do that. If they bring something special and something that we can use, that's more valuable than our need. So we want really good athletes, obviously, just like everybody does. We're going to recruit a lot of shortstops. We're going to recruit a lot of catchers. And then more importantly, moving forward, this is positional standpoint. What we're talking about here is we want guys that can create. We want speed. We want a combination of speed and power. So because we like to run, the things that we do that, I'm growing up, on the West Coast, we enjoy, the short game and back control and all the things offensively that, we learned out there and I learned out there that we're still using here at Wabash Valley. So we want speed and power. We want athletic guys. But more importantly, we really want to grind on the fact that, hey, what kind of background does this kid come from? What kind of worker is he? Has he went through some failure? Does he play and come from a good program? I think that's really important, is recruiting players from good programs where they've been through some things, they've been well coached. So the learning curve is a little bit, of course we love to teach, but when you come from a good program, you've been through some failure, you've been through some things, you've been well coached. So, we trust the guys that we're recruiting from. And so from a positional standpoint, we want to recruit speed and some power and have a good balance of that in our offense. And from a pitching standpoint, it's really hard because everybody wants, the great arms and the guys that throw hard. And for us, we want a combination of guys who can throw strikes and have good arm action that we can develop. It's tough to get a guy who already throws 92 to 94 that, is throwing strikes. We're not going to get that guy. So we have to do some projecting and we have to have confidence in our coaching ability that we're going to get a pitcher that, maybe doesn't throw real hard yet, that we're going to develop. Maybe his arm works well and he throws strikes and he's from a good program. So it's the recruiting part is so much fun, and every year we're trying to improve on what we do here.
So just kind of across the board, I know for pitchers, and it was this way when I used to come and watch you guys play, teams like to recruit big body pitchers, guys that are tall,
Sure.
Guys that are pretty strong. For someone that might be listening to this who maybe doesn't fit that physical profile, maybe a guy that's like a 5'10", 5'11" right-hander, What does a kid like that need to do to be able to not only find his way onto the Wabash Valley roster, but to earn some innings for you guys? Obviously, if that's not everything, the size and even the velocity, I'll throw that in there too. A guy that maybe doesn't, is 5'10", 5'11", that maybe throws, as pretty good velocity, but not off the charts velocity. What does that guy need to do for you guys to be interested in him and then have that guy earn some playing time for you?
So I think he needs to have a separator pitch, that we call it, and I think that he really needs a really good breaking ball and really needs to dominate the strike zone, and he's the guy that has to be the ultra competitor, and that's the thing that the recruiting part is a little bit more difficult to project and recruit, is what kind of competitor is that guy. He needs to be able to throw strikes. He's got to have a good changeup and a curveball, and so that guy has to be what we say an overachiever, and we recruit those guys all the time. And some of our number one pitcher right now was the same way. Out of high school, he was 82 to 85, but he threw strikes, and he was an ultra competitor. He was a quarterback in high school, and we saw he could develop. And so right now he's 87 to 91, and he signed a really good scholarship to University of Alabama. So we have tremendous need for those guys. It's just a matter of, hey, you really got to be a guy that likes to work, but you better have some really good secondary stuff.
Just speaking about velocity, that's an area that gets a lot of attention on social media, and for good reason. I think there's something definitely to velocity on the mound. I think everybody likes it. As a recruiter, I think you're making a mistake if you're not trying to recruit velocity, but obviously not everybody can get it. Not every school is necessarily in a position to, like you said, to get a guy that's 90, 92 out of high school.
Right.
What kind of velocity do you guys typically see? Like, where's a high school kid typically at when you guys are recruiting him? Someone that you think is maybe projectable, but what kind of velocity are you typically getting out of high school into your place, just to give people sort of a reference?
I would say, so there's several guys that we've recruited that are all 87 to 90, but do they really pitch pitch there? Do they throw strikes there? No, it's a whole different debate. But we'll get guys like that. We also get guys that are maybe 85 to 88 that really has a good breaking ball or really good changeup, and you can project that with the velocity and does his arm work and all those good things. But for the most part, we want guys that are athletic, that are mid to upper 80s, that, throw the good breaking ball, throw the good changeup. If we can get anybody better than that, that's great. But there's a lot that goes into that, and, we have confidence that we can develop guys. But at the same time, of course we want velocity. We all get tricked into that, but it's not the end of all.
I want to ask a couple questions just for people, again, trying to help them to understand just some terms and some things that coaches look for. You're looking for a competitor in high school. What do you see out of a high school baseball player that that you're going to write down or note that, wow, this guy is competitive? Like, what are you looking for in games?
And that's a great question. So, a lot of it is how he deals with, his composure, his body language, all those things are seen. And just kind of talking about that a little bit, that's something that, we really take a lot of pride in talking about every single day and working on. It's just body language, how much that dictates, what you're sending off to the other team. Can you bounce back after a bad call? Can you pitch through adversity? Can you pitch through, getting hit? Can you pitch through having bad stuff? That composure and that body language is a huge deal for us here. And that's something that as coaches here at Wabash Valley that we started really learning about and understanding that part of the game, how important that is. I think that's when we really started to get, take our program to the next level, is understand the crucialness of that.
Is that something you think you can teach, or is that something that you want to see from a kid before you bring him in?
Well, I think it's something you can teach. I really do. And if you talk about it every day and work on it every single day, what it looks like, what needs to be happen, and that goes back to the mental game of how to breathe, how to get back to your moment. I think that in high school it's tough. There's some. That's why it goes back to recruiting, players from good programs, and not that. We'll recruit kids from anywhere, but at the same time, I think that there's some great high school coaches out there right now that work on that stuff, and so. But yeah, that's stuff that we look at as a competitor. Does he work? And then ultimately, we want to know how hard he works in practice, and works on the little things, whether it's schoolwork, all those things count for us in competing. Competing is, it's across the board. It's competing in the classroom. It's competing in the weight room. It's competing, when he does running drills, swimming drills, just whatever the case may be. I mean, we want our guys to compete at everything we do. So we're going to do a lot of research on how a kid competes.
You also mentioned that you want athletic kids multiple times, and that might be a little bit harder to define. But if you're talking to a parent or a young player, what are things that you see from a young kid that you're noting that this guy is athletic? How do you define athleticism when you're watching a high school athlete?
It's funny, and I think this most. You can show up to a ballpark and just watch the way kids carry themselves, watch the way they walk, watch the way they play catch. Talk to the coaches about how they do in their workouts. But basically the measurables, obviously, as a position player, how does he run? How does he lift? Is he a good basketball player? Does he play other sports? There's so many things going into that. For me, I am still really firm on, kids need to play multiple sports, and that's different than a lot of, coaches these days. But we want our guys to, hey, did you play football? That's awesome, because it's so competitive and you have to be athletic. I want guys to play multiple sports if possible. But at this day and age, it's hard because everything's year-round. But that wasn't the case growing up, and I think that was a really good benefit that I had and, players around me, that they were more athletic in some areas. So.
How would you respond to a parent or a young player who said that I don't play multiple sports because I feel like I would have fallen behind in baseball? So early on in my, freshman, sophomore year or whatever of high school, I decided I'm only going to play baseball. Obviously, you just said you like multi-sport athletes. If you're talking with a parent again or an athlete who has that outlook, how would you respond to that?
I think you can easily talk to the parent about, hey, if you really love basketball, you'll find a way, okay? If you really love football, you'll find a way to practice baseball, on the side or, basically after practice, before practice, you'll find a way. But I would never tell a parent, hey, you just need to play one sport, because the memories that you get in, high school football and high school basketball are things, and what they teach you as far as competing and being more athletic and just developing relationships in those moments are just priceless to me. So I would say find a way.
You've obviously got in my opinion, a great outlook on a lot of things, and just to me that the continued success your program has had, you're doing a lot of things the right way, and you probably have these conversations with your own coaches, but speaking to a young coach, if you had a chance to speak to a guy in his first or second year of coaching, no matter what level it was, what would be a little bit of advice that you would give a young coach who's just beginning his baseball coaching career?
For me, I think it's so important for you to be open-minded. So I would talk to the young coach about being open-minded, okay, and listening and understand that form your own philosophy, but at the same time, you just have to understand how important it is to work and listen and learn and listen and learn, and don't be afraid to make mistakes, and just be coachable. As a young coach, that was the biggest thing for me, is understanding the minor details. I can remember my first year at MacMurray College, we were sending out recruiting letters, and I spelled a kid's name wrong, and my head coach realized and told me about it. He made me understand how important the finer details about everything. And so it's funny how, this day and age, I still talk about that in our program. One of the central themes is everything counts. And so just being coachable and understand that every little thing counts, and that to be open-minded about things is so important.
So for you personally, when you're going through your day, you've obviously got to maintain, you've got to have, time management. You've got to be on point every day as the head coach of a program, and be able to maintain your success. Are there anything that you do personally that sort of helps you to stay on track every day, or anything that you think leads to you sort of being set up to have a successful day? Because you've talked about that a number of times, just kind of being your best every day. Is there anything that you do to kind of keep yourself at your best every day, whether it's a little bit of morning coffee or, just any personal habit you might have?
Well, number one, I am a huge coffee person. My wife calls me a coffee snob, so there's no doubt about that. Going back to the old-fashioned things to do list, I think that's something that we talk to our assistant coaches about, that I want you to actually write it down. What's important. And the things to do list is ultra important. And the first thing we do as a coaching staff is we meet and talk about practice. And how are we going to dominate the day, making the best practice plan, whether it's just, for example, today, we know we probably got to figure out where to practice. It might be in the tennis courts. It might be somewhere else. Whatever we got to do, we're going to spend an hour and a half to 2 hours sometimes trying to figure out how we're going to get our players better, and how we're going to put our guys in a situation where they're going to compete. And there's no excuses, no matter if we're dealing with bad weather or not. We're going to find a way to compete and make our practice the best possible way it is. So that's the ultimate thing, is putting priorities in line, and player development has to be the most important thing. So we'll talk about practice from the very get-go, and then we will work from there.
You and I talked before we started recording, and you kind of brought it up, so I'd like to bring it up again, just about not always being able to practice on a field, but not making excuses about it, and understanding that you still have to find a way to get better. Just for anybody, coaches in the North out there, would you mind talk a little bit just about when you can't get on a field, just some creative things that you guys do, and some weird places that you'll practice just to find a way to get your guys outside, or just a way to get some reps in?
Sure. I mean, there's so many different ways, and you have to be extremely creative. Today, for example, we'll be probably in our parking lot or the tennis courts, like I alluded to. So, just to get thrown in. If we have to shovel some snow, we'll have to do it just to get long toss in. But we'll do long toss sometimes in the nets. We're fortunate that we do have a gym that we can play catch in. But inside, our pitchers are throwing live today. So we have, I think, 6 or 7 pitchers that are throwing live today. We're going to divide up into 2 teams, and they're going to compete on just, obviously we can't see in a cage where the ball goes, but we're going to keep track of, for example, barrel shots is number 1. And the winner's going to have a they're going to be able to celebrate. The loser's going to be able to, they're going to have consequences for it. So we have the barrel competition. We have what we talk about with K-zone awareness competition, where, hey, we want our guys, we value, hit, swinging a strike. So little things like that we're going to try to do to compete. Our pitchers have their own competition of throwing strikes and that kind of thing. So, but it takes time to go over that and be organized about that. So we try to do that the day before, the morning of, whatever the case may be. There's crazy times where, we've had to practice, basically in the middle of the road sometimes, wherever we can do to find a spot, to do long toss or take ground balls or whatever the case may be. It's, to me, we talk about this, and I'm sure you've all heard this, but it helped our program when you embrace what we call the suck. It's ultra important, and our guys, they get a kick out of that. But it's the truth, you have fun with it, and ultimately we feel like our guys will appreciate more things. So
I think that's great, and such a great perspective on a lot of things. This is Rob Fournier, everybody. He's the head baseball coach at Wabash Valley Community College, a junior college in Mount Carmel, Illinois, and one of the most successful junior college programs in the country. He's been there for 22 years. They've won 22 straight winning seasons, 22 straight seasons of 30 or more wins. 15 of the last 22 seasons the team has won 40 or more games. Just a team that you can count on to be in the top 25 nationally every year. So, Rob, I really appreciate you spending the time with us today on the podcast. To me, it was very informative and just a lot of really great info. Hopefully, people that got to tune in, feel the same way I did about it. But I was pretty locked in the whole time. So I really appreciate you spending some time with us today.
Well, just on the flip side, I've done several of these, and I just love the questions you ask because they're important questions, and I just appreciate you having me here, and I hope that we've helped any parents out there. It's been great to talk with you. Appreciate you.
Yeah, I think we'll have to do this again sometime because toward the end there you start talking about your practices. I'd almost like to talk to you more just about how you set things up, kind of some specific things you do at practice. So maybe we'll have to set up another one of these at some point. But again, I appreciate your time today, and best of luck to you guys this spring, which you guys are starting pretty soon, aren't you?
Absolutely. February 9th, first day down in Tennessee, Jackson State. So it's going to be fun.
Very good. Well, good luck to you guys this spring. Thanks again.
Thank you so much.